Hey everybody, welcome to The Art of Photography. Special announcement I wanted to make today. If anybody kind of noticed that 2 weeks ago this podcast turned 1 year old. I've been doing this for a year now. 30 episodes in, some other stats I want to share with you. There's about 1,000 people on the Flickr group now, about 1,000 people unique visits that I get per month on the website, and per episode on Mevio and iTunes, it's amazing. I get about 10,000 downloads an episode. And so what I wanted to do is take a second today to say thank you for watching. I don't do this for a living, I do it for fun. In fact, I spend money to do it. The reason I started, well, there's two, about a year ago, is one, for me, I love teaching. And the reason I love teaching is because it forces me, when I have to explain something to somebody else, it forces me to know the material inside out and to think about things. And so it definitely has an impact on me, and I highly recommend, if you're remotely interested in teaching, to go for it. The second reason is I do it for you. I really wanted to find other people around the world that would be interested in this content that I could share ideas with. And I've met a bunch of people through doing this and made a bunch of contacts. It's been a lot of fun. So really I just want to take a second and say thank you for watching. We got another exciting year in the works. I've got some new things I want to try. We're going to do a sister podcast to this, which will be audio only. So kind of just keep in tune the next couple weeks when we'll be making some announcements on that. Now, for today, what we're going to cover is a topic that I didn't think a couple years ago I would ever cover, which is cell phone photography. Now, you may be thinking, why are you going to cover this? This is lo-fi, crappy material. Well, real quick, let's put this in historical perspective. In the 50s and 60s, when you had the advent of 35mm photography, that changed everything, particularly for photojournalists. If you think, and mainly, you know, that was considered a lo-fi format at the time. The area of the picture on the negative in 35mm is very small compared to large format 8x10, 4x5, things like that. But what it did was it enabled a smaller camera, so it enabled people who are doing photojournalism material to get the kinds of photos they would have never been able to get with a larger camera setup, mainly because you don't have the setup time and you don't have the bulk of the equipment. You can literally just grab a camera and travel. And so it allows you to get more off-the-cuff images. It allowed photographers to get things that were improvised. It allowed them to get reactions from people the minute something happened. And that was huge. That was a big deal for photography in general. It really changed the way, it changed the types of pictures that we see from a historical perspective and up to now. Now, I think right now we're about to go through a second incarnation of that in a way, and it's through mobile photography. Now, this has been around for a while. There have been all sorts of expensive gadgets and cameras and setups, particularly for sports photographers and event photographers, news photographers, to be able to upload the final home run of a baseball game to ESPN the second it's done. So if somebody hit the website 2 minutes later, the photo's there, or an election results, or anything like this. So these things have been around, but what's exciting is this is becoming, with the advent of smartphones and the like, this is in the hands of the consumer now. And the fact that, I mean, this is an iPhone, and I will be the first to admit that the camera in here is really pretty janky. But what's amazing, though, is I have a Wi-Fi connection, and they have an app store. So I can download and purchase photography apps to put on my phone to make the pictures a little less, well, less bad is a relative term, but what it'll do is it'll change the quality from something that's just plain ugly to something that's interesting for me. And the fact that I can upload that and distribute it to the internet instantly is amazing. It's a mind blower. It's a game changer for everybody. And for those of you who follow me on the Twitter or Flickr, you probably noticed that the last couple of weeks I've been posting a lot of cell phone shots. This is something I've been researching for the podcast and kind of getting into, and I've really loved it. In fact, I will say I haven't been this excited about lo-fi, cool photography since the Holga, since I bought my first Holga. So that's really saying a lot from my perspective. And there's a couple things that are cool about it. I can shoot without having to worry about anything on here. I always have it with me. The form factor is so slim, it fits in my pocket. Again, this could be any cell phone. And another thing is psychologically, if you go to a party with your big Canon 5D and you want to take some images, people react differently when you whip a camera out. They kind of feel like they have to pose or look good or get out of the photo, stuff like that. You're able to get much more off the cuff stuff with this because it kind of acts sort of more like a spy cam. And then even people who notice that you're using your cell phone to take pictures, I think people expect lo-fi out of it, and so they don't react the same way that they do when you have a large camera with you, which is, I think that's part of the vibe that comes off of these. So one thing that I do, and the reason that I prefer the iPhone is because of their app store. There are a lot of photography apps in there that I haven't seen with T-Mobile or BlackBerry or some of these others. If you don't have a smartphone, or if you have one of the phones I just talked about, don't worry. You can still download them to your computer and use Photoshop or any photo editor to mess with your images and then put them online. But the whole point is that it's instant, quick photography that you can distribute right from the phone. So what I want to do today is kind of show you, part one of this, and we'll go through through and I'll show you on my phone a couple apps I use. Some are free, some are paid, and I usually use a combination of them to manipulate an image to get kind of a vibe that I want. And then we'll do another podcast next time, and we'll talk about how to use things like Posterous or Facebook or Twitter to distribute those through a variety of sources on the internet. So let's reconfigure the camera a little bit, and I'll show you how I do this. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the iPhone here, and I'm going to show you a couple apps that I like to use to do some post-processing on my photos. Now, generally, I just shoot with the built-in camera app, and I just shoot like crazy, and then I do all my post-processing later when I can sit down and look at the images right before I upload them straight from the camera to the web, which is really cool. Anyway, there's a couple different kind of classes of photography apps that you can find in the App Store. I'm going to show you kind of a quick and dirty one. There's one called Camera Bag, and there's not a lot of control in here, but it's really nice if you just want to get some quick looks that certain cameras give. Obviously Helga, we've talked a lot on this podcast about the Holga, and the names have been changed for copyright reasons. You can't sell an app and call it Holga. But anyway, we'll go ahead and select an image here off our to process folder. I'll select an image of these pumpkins. And you can see right off the bat that this gives you a Holga look. It gives you a square image with vignetted corners, a little bit brighter in the middle. The focus gets a little soft on the edges. And I just can scroll through these and check out other looks. Here's the Lolo, which is a Lomo camera look. I can keep going. Here's Magazine, which is more of a 35mm high contrast look. Instant, which is a faded Polaroid with the border on it. Anyway, and Mono, which is monochromatic. 1962, which is a higher contrast black and white image. You can see the difference there. So anyway, it gives you a lot of great options. If I want to save one at any point, I can just hit the save button down here. It'll go ahead and process the image and save it to the phone. Here's Mono. Maybe I want to compare and contrast a couple of these. So I can keep working. I can save Magazine out. Now, unfortunately, the looks that are preset in here, you really don't have much control over them. They're pretty much set, okay? So I'll show you another app where you get a little more control out of. Adobe has released a Photoshop application for the iPhone, which surprisingly is free. It's very cool. They have a companion website you can upload photos to, which is well done, even though it's a Flash site, but it's still very well done. I'm going to go ahead, and you can also take photos directly from here, but I'm going to select a pre-shot. Actually, let's go back here to the to process, and I'm going to select this photo, this bridge. Okay. Now you can see in here that there's 4 icons along the top. There's a crop icon, there's a color icon, there's one for looks, etc. Let's go ahead and select the crop here, and it gives me some options of rotating, flipping. We'll go ahead and select crop. Whoops, sorry, I'm doing 2 things at once here. Anyway, and you just drag this frame around until you have the crop that you want, and you can go ahead. Anytime you want to commit to something, you hit the green check mark, or you hit the X to cancel out if it's not what you wanted. I'm going to show you under the color menu. There's some really great stuff. I can mess with the exposure. So if this is a strangely exposed image too, because it's hard to do on a digital camera phone, but anyway, I can increase the exposure, and I can increase or decrease just by sliding my thumb along the screen. So kind of like if I tap in the middle, that's kind of 0 where I took the shot, and if I want to go lower, I just drag over to the left, or if I want to go higher, I drag over to the right, and you can start seeing it brightens up a lot of those details in there. Let's go ahead and commit to that. And then I can keep adding effects to it if I want, which is really nice. Another one that's really cool is this Tint function. Let's go ahead and select Tint. Now when I drag across the screen here, it gives me a little color spectrum at the top, and basically you select the color that you want to tint the photo, so you can give it a kind of an old, brown look to it, or I can make it more modern and give it a blue look, something like that. So anyway, so a lot of control, a lot of cool things you can do in here. There also is let's cancel that, there's a preset, so there are some looks, so to speak, in here. If I want an Andy Warhol effect, I can do that. There's one in here that's kind of cool, that's a vignette blur around the edges. Sorry, it's warm vintage, here it is, which just basically adds a blur to the outside of the image and keeps it sharp in the center. So anyway, some really nice stuff there. That's the Photoshop.com app, which is really cool. For even more control, one I really recommend, there's several. Milcolor is a free one. Milcolor is excellent. But one I like is Photo Genie. And I know the name is a little corny and the graphics are cartoonish, but this is a really nicely done app. I'm going to go ahead and say Edit Photo, and let's go to the to process here. I'm going to pick the potatoes this time, and it's going to bring them up. And my icons are basically along the side. I can crop this image, I can rotate the image. Next down is this little thing that looks like a funnel. It's actually a filter. So let's go ahead and click on that. The first option I get in here, which is really nice, is a sharpness option. And that's one of the things. The iPhone has a little meniscus lens on it. If you don't know what that is, go look at one of the early lens podcasts we did. But it allows me to basically sharpen this up. It's not the sharpest lens in the world. One thing that I really like about Photo Genie 2 that some of the other apps don't offer the option is if I tap the photo, it'll let me view in full scale, so I can see if I'm over sharpening this, which is real easy to do sometimes. Let's crank it all the way up. You probably can't tell from this video, but anyway, that's starting to get a little grainy. It's too sharp. There's a pencil effect in here, and anytime I can reset any of these effects too, and they'll go back to the original state. So you don't commit to anything until the end when you actually save your photo. As far as color adjustments, this is nice too, because it works a lot more like what you're used to seeing in Photoshop or Fireworks, where you get your little histogram at the bottom. It has an auto levels in here. Which I didn't really like. It's a little bright. I'm going to back off on that just a little bit. Really cool stuff there. There's an exposure setting, so this is kind of a fun effect too. I can bring the exposure down on here and then bring the contrast up, and you can start to get a real moody kind of feel to it, which is kind of a fun effect to play with on here. There's color options, which is nice, saturation, color, temperature, and also RGB sliders. So if I want to make this more yellow and less blue, I can tone down the blue. I can bring up the reds a little bit. Maybe bring in the magentas a little bit, or add green, depending on which way you want to go on that. So anyway, again, anytime you mess up, you can just hit reset. So my whole point in showing you all this stuff, and there's some goofy stuff in here too, there's borders and stuff like that that you may or may not want to use. But my whole point in showing you these is what's really cool is, and I think, for one, sales point on the iPhone, is that the App Store and that the apps that are available for this phone, and there's hundreds of photography apps, really make this an appealing choice if you're a photographer. Again, this is real guerrilla style photography. I like the fact that the camera doesn't look like the phone doesn't look like a camera, and it allows a different type of photography. It's more kind of like jazz improvisation, where you can just not worry about your big camera and all this. It's just a phone. You can go shoot and have fun with it. It's always with you, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if you don't have an iPhone, there are other options too. T-Mobile has an app store. Most major phone makers do. And if you have an old phone that doesn't even have the ability to run applications, you can always download these to your computer and run them out of Photoshop. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So anyway, but what I'm showing you is just basic ways you can do some editing just straight up from the phone. So that's pretty much it. You're able to take photos, edit them, and upload them all from the camera, which is pretty amazing. Now, we only talked about part of this today. We talked about once you've got the photos, how to edit them specifically on the iPhone. What we're going to do next time, tune back in, and we'll talk about distribution on the internet and all the wonderful things that are available via Flickr, Posterous, etc. So anyway, hope you found this interesting, and thanks for watching.